texting messages at this.
Okay, John, were they aware that we were going to be calling them at 9 o'clock this morning?
It just says that we're going to try to call them during Commissioner's Court.
Okay.
It doesn't say 9 o'clock in what day, other than what's posted on the website. Public, that's.
Okay. Okay.
I can try and clarify that for them.
Okay. We tried 3 times for each one. We had a request in. Okay, moving right along to agenda item number 4, certificates of completion and awards.
And we have one.
We have one, it's Web Junction. Okay, certificate of attendance. Nikki Storr has viewed the webinar, Reopening Archives, Libraries, and Museums, Materials Testing and Resource Overview, August the 5th, 2020, credit hours 90 minutes. And that's the only one we've got?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, moving right along to agenda item number 5, extension activity reports, the handouts that we've got.
Yes, sir. There is one from Nicole and one from Courtney.
Nicole and Courtney aren't here. Anybody have any questions or comments? Move right along. Okay, agenda item number 6, Wichita Jackson County Judge, discuss and take action on allowing Heather Silva of Camp Gladiator, an exercise group, to hold exercise classes on the courtyard of and/or in the parking lot. CJ Zeller approached me. She is she's a detective or an investigator, and she is in this exercise group, and they're losing their place to hold it, and they wanted to use our, depends on, I guess, the weather and the time, whether it be the courtyard or the parking lot.
Are you going to participate?
No.
Sure.
I don't think they could keep up with me, so.
Okay, probably not. Probably not.
What time of day are?
It said 5 o'clock in the morning is one class, and 6 o'clock in the evening is the next class. They will not be here during our work hours. If I came, I'd come to the 5 o'clock with you.
I'll see no problem. I'll make a motion to it.
Motion by Commissioner Gomez,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Wiley, to allow them to use our courtyard and our parking lot. Is there any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So,
Judge Jackson?
yes.
I would like to speak on that just for a minute. I've been attending that class at 5 a.m. in the mornings, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it's an excellent class. Hard? Oh my goodness, it is so hard. But I'm getting stronger and I'm feeling better, and it was at the event center, and the city of Floresville decided that it was not a good fit for them, so that's why they asked her to find another location. And I think her 5 a.m. class is going to be moving to a different location, so here it'll only be at
6 p.m. and 7:15 on Monday, Wednesday, and then Fridays is just 6 p.m. But we're going to have the First Baptist Church, the bank building, for the 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. classes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay. Well, y'all have a good time.
Thank you so much.
It's consistent too with Texas Association Counties Healthy County Initiative that they've been really promoting for the last 2 or 3 years through Texas Association of Counties. So I just think, I appreciate y'all doing that because it's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 7, Wichita Jackson County Judge, presentation and briefing by Workforce Solutions, Alamo, Adrian Lopez, regarding the 2021 to the 2024 local plan and update on employment plan. Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you.
I know it's been a few months since we saw each other. I know that when I first started at Workforce Solutions, I mentioned that I'd like to come back to the communities. Unfortunately, we got hit by this pandemic, so that kind of stalled things a little bit, but I'm happy to be back. So today's presentation is actually two parts. One part is associated with the unemployment claims to kind of give you an idea of what's happening in this county as well as what's happening in the region. And then the second part of the presentation is to talk a little bit about our local plan, which is basically our strategic plan, which is a 4-year plan that we are starting to put together, that we're required to put together based on the Texas Workforce Commission's regulations. So I'll start off on the unemployment claims, and so you have a slide deck here. What you see in that very first slide is the unemployment claims that were being filed on a weekly basis. And so, as you can see, we are obviously in a very unprecedented time. The first week of March, we saw approximately about 840 claims filed that particular week. The subsequent weeks, you can see the unprecedented numbers as they started to come week by week. So that increased all the way up to approximately 32,000 in the last week of March, and then continued sort of around the 30s, around the April time frame. As the economy started to open up around the May time frame, we started to see the unemployment claims significantly reduced to about 13,000 in that first week or so of May, and then continued to sort of see a downturn as June came up. In June, you also started to see, June and July time frame, you started to see actually an uptick in unemployment claims, and that was largely associated with the COVID cases that were coming up. And so the economy was closed for a short time, started to open up in May. In June, started to be retracted because COVID cases were on an increase, and so the unemployment claims were actually following what was happening in real time on a weekly basis. The good news is it's continued to actually still go down on a weekly basis up through around the first week of September. We still have pulling data associated with the September time frame. In this next slide, you'll see a graph that shows the exact same information, although on a monthly basis. So of course in March we saw about 54,000 claims. That shot up to almost 110,000. In April, 53,000 in May, and then has hovered around the 30+ thousand in June, July, and August. September numbers there reflected, of course, don't reflect the full number for September. So in terms of what your labor reports here in Wilson County look like prior to the COVID, you had approximately about 25,000 people in the labor force. About 23,000 of them were employed, and about 1,200 that were unemployed. So you were hovering approximately about 4%. If you look at the next slide, actually you were hovering about 3% around this time frame, early part of this year. That started to shoot up around the March through April and May time frame, to about 6.5% to almost 7% in June. So a couple of things are happening here in Wilson County. Obviously, the effects associated with the pandemic, but you also were being affected about what was happening regarding the oil industry. So there's two crises that we were facing here in this particular region. Crisis associated with the pandemic, but then also the crisis associated with the oil prices. And so the good news is actually up until last month, your unemployment rate started to decrease from June. In July and August. In August showed a rate of about 5.1%. Unfortunately, in September we did see an uptick, which is back up to about 6.2%. So things are kind of going a little bit sort of on a roller coaster ride. So obviously very high around the May, June time frame, and then started to go down, but started to uptick again around the September time frame. So what based on September's numbers, there are about 1,500 people who are looking for employment at this particular point. And the way the unemployment rate is calculated, it's based on people who are unemployed, but they're also looking for employment. There are some that have lost their jobs, but are not looking for employment, so they wouldn't be factored into this unemployment rate. In any case, your unemployment rate is lower than the region as a whole. The region as a whole is about 7.7%, and then the state as a whole is at about 8.3%. It's still not as good as where we were back pre-COVID, but things got a little bit better, but then upticked again. How you fare in terms of sort of the claims on the next slide compared to the other counties, you'll see that the vast majority of the 300+ thousand claims or so are located in people who live in Bexar County and the city of San Antonio. However, we've had some pretty significant claims in other rural counties such as Comal and Guadalupe, which is about 16 and 14,000. Where Wilson falls in relation to each of those counties is about 3,600 claims that you had in this particular county. And the way that's calculated is based on where people live. It's not based on where people work. So you potentially have somebody living here in Wilson County, but may be working in Bexar County or Guadalupe or Carnes or some other county, but it's based on sort of where people are living. So you have about 3,600 folks that file for unemployment in this particular county. In terms of the what sectors and by age were most affected for the whole region, on the next slide you'll see that ages 15 to 24 and 25 to 34 were the hardest hit individuals who file for unemployment. They make up about more than 50% of the folks who file for unemployment. However, if you look at the whole graph, you see that the age, that almost every age has been affected in relation to people who lost their jobs, were furloughed, or were laid off. On the next slide, you'll see we took this opportunity to just kind of take a look at your educational attainment level for Wilson County. And the reason we pulled this information is it's applicable to what we're seeing in the region in terms of which industries are actually being more affected in terms of unemployment claims. And so for the most part, throughout the region, it was food and accommodation sectors that were affected, retail sectors that were affected, and then healthcare that was affected. Your counties are slightly a little bit different, and we'll go to that in just a second. But you've got about 4,500 people in this county who don't have a high school diploma or GED. Many times people who are working in food and accommodation and retail services are those that may not have that education to be able to springboard into another job or career opportunity. How that looks like in terms of the total region, in terms of educational level, that's on the next slide. So you have approximately about 38,000 or so folks that don't have a high school diploma or GED that file for unemployment. So that presents some challenges, of course, because many times we have to focus on that particular aspect in order to get people to springboard to their next career opportunity. In terms of sort of the breakdown of the industries that were most affected in this particular county, that's on the next slide here. And so that is slightly different than when we compare your county to other counties in the region. Healthcare and social services really took a huge hit in this particular county, which is actually very unique. You're the only county in the 13-county region that has that particular situation. So I'm not sure if that's mostly with sort of either dental offices or small types of sort of offices here providing healthcare services, but we had approximately about 340 folks that had filed for unemployment. Now the food and accommodation services, that is in line with what's happening in other parts of the region. Administrative and supportive services, if you will. That's a little unique to this particular county. And then, of course, mining and quarry and oil, that's somewhat unique. We have some similarities to neighboring counties like Atascosa and Carnes that had similar types of situations, right? But for the most part, other than the accommodation and food services and healthcare, you're kind of a little unique from the perspective of what's happening in Wilson County. In terms of what we're doing to help people with who are filed for unemployment during this time frame, so if you go to the next slide, you'll see that out of the 3,600 people that filed for unemployment in this county, 2,300 of them signed up with Work in Texas, which is our opportunity to then work with them to be able to, give them job leads, give them an opportunity to get retrained or reskilled, get into a new industry. So you don't quite have 3,600 of those that signed up. You have about 2,300 that signed up, but we're working actively with those individuals to try to get them new jobs. In terms of the job market and what that looks like for Wilson County, the next slide gives you an idea of that. So you lost 3,600 jobs, but there are still new jobs being posted. It's not matching exactly the 3,600 jobs that you lost, but in terms of sort of what's transpired over the course of the last few months, is had about almost 300 new job postings that were, or openings that were posted for this particular county. The difference between the green and the blue colors there in the bar graph is that you have job postings, which could actually be, let's say, a waiter position, but you actually may have 5 waiter positions actually. So that's why you have the blue graph a little bit higher than the green one. So there is some somewhat good news there, but so what we would encourage people is if they're not looking for a job or can't find a job, is for them to re-engage with us in terms of our local office that we have here to provide them training opportunities and reskilling opportunities, because every dislocated worker or every person who has lost their job or has been furloughed or laid off or had their hours reduced is automatically qualified for our particular programs. And so we would encourage people to get engaged with us so that we can provide those types of services. I'll pause at this point for this part of the presentation to answer any questions that you may have at this point.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay. So,
Well, let me
yes, sir.
get back, okay? And it hasn't happened here in Wilson County, because I've talked with Dr. Levy a while ago at the hospital. Hospital's the same as it's been for the last several weeks or months or anything, but do you anticipate anything if the numbers go back up? Will it affect employment again?
Yeah, we tend to see that. So one of the things that just happened to us this particular month was effective October 1st. The airline industry laid off thousands of people across the state, and so that included some folks living in this particular region. We don't know the exact numbers just yet, but one of the things that obviously has been shown in terms of the data is that as COVID cases increases, the unemployment claims also increase. The other thing that is kind of one of those factors that we're trying to monitor and see what the effect is going to be is that we had a number of employers in this particular region that filed for the PPP loans in order to continue to operate their businesses. The question really becomes, what happens to those businesses that or employers that committed to, because they received a loan, hold their employees for 6 months. What happens after those 6 months? Do they keep those employees, or do they release those employees? If they release those employees, then obviously we're going to continue to see unemployment claims increase. There's a few things that are in play as well. Other things that are in play in terms of sort of what happens with Congress in terms of any kind of new stimulus bill. There's been discussions, obviously, there's been back and forth between both sides of the aisle in terms of trying to negotiate that. Doesn't look like that's going to happen before the election, and we'll see if it even happens after the election. But if there's a stimulus bill that, again, addresses not only employer services and opportunities for employers to kind of seek additional assistance to continue to operate and keep employees, that's a possibility that could happen. The other is as it relates to unemployment insurance. One of the things that's about to happen, and it's going to be happening in the next few weeks, is that people who are on unemployment are going to start to see their unemployment benefits start to run off. Under normal circumstances, there are 26 weeks of unemployment, but because Congress passed the CARES Act around the March and April time frame, they added another 13 weeks. So for people who are signing up for unemployment around the April time frame, around May time frame, they're going to start to see their unemployment benefits start to run out. So that's going to be, interesting to see what the effects of that is. Are there enough jobs and enough opportunities to get those folks back re-engaged? And we don't know whether that that's gonna happen or not. What we have seen is 300,000 unemployment claims, about 121 to 125,000 new jobs being created during the time frame of around May to like around August. So there's a mismatch in terms of people who lost their jobs and people who are new job opportunities. So a lot is sort of uncertain at the moment. A lot of what's happening is obviously dependent on this pandemic, as well as some other factors that I mentioned. Yes, sir.
Do you know the percentage between the all retail, the gas industry versus the incumbents? What hit us hard at Wilson County?
In terms of the oil versus gas, that's a good question. I have to look at that, the data a little bit more closely to be able to factor that in. And I'm not sure this is data that we received from Texas Workforce Commission, whether they just classify that all in one chunk. I would assume based on sort of the codes that the way they're tracking data, they're probably going to just track that in one chunk and not sort of separate that. But maybe we can look into this, see if there's a way to hone in on that data. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Dr. Andrea Guajardo, who works with us. She's our Chief Information Officer with the agency, and she's going to present the next few slides regarding our local site.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. My name is Dr. Andrea Guajardo. As Mr. Lopez said, I'm the Chief Information Officer. So a lot of the data you see comes out of our department, and we're happy to answer any other probing questions you might want to, if we can. But yeah, feel free to, if you have questions that relate to anything that you've seen here, just let us know, and we're happy to help you as you do your planning. So I want to talk to you a little today about our plan. Are you familiar with the local plan? Have you ever read it? Don't feel bad. We've been coming to commissioners' boards for a couple of months now and talking to commissioners like yourselves, and very, very few of the commissioners in the rural areas have read the plan, and most certainly have never participated in its development, which I feel is a really tragic state of affairs, especially because the plan is intended to outline how Workforce Solutions Alamo supports your region and your county. So that's why I'm here today to talk to you about what it is and how it is developed, and ask for your participation. So the local plan, the current one's posted on our website, or I can send a link to your offices if you'd like to read it. It's very, very long, but what it is it's requirement by Texas Workforce Commission. We're required to update the local plan every 4 years. So it's like a strategic plan for the 13 county regions. And then we have a 2-year update. So basically we kind of look at it every 2 years. In its current form, it really addresses the needs of the region as a whole without really looking at the very unique characteristics that make Wilson County different from Karnes or Atascosa or Comal or Bear. Each of these counties can be described as sort of rural counties, but I come from a small town. I'm from Alva, Texas, in Bernardo County, and when Mr. Lopez is from Cotulla, and we know what small towns are like, but I also know that where I grew up is very different than from where he grew up. So with that understanding, we want to come at developing this new local plan with a different lens and a different perspective, and that is a focus on local priority. And so what we're looking at, you'll see on your slide, the domains that we're looking for. Obviously we look at national programs and workforce, what's going on at the national level, what are some best practices at the state level. Maybe the best practices exist here in Wilson County, but we wouldn't know that unless we asked you what's going on in Wilson County. And we'd like to look at what the ecosystem of workforce looks like here in your county. Who's participating in workforce development? Do they even know that what they're doing is workforce development? Because we see a lot of things like that, especially like on-the-job training and in the high schools with internships, or the way that some of the vocational programs are structured. That's workforce development. We want to be able to capture that to show that what Wilson County is doing really does matter to how the local plan is developed. And then to look at your county level priorities. As I said, what is important to you is not necessarily the same as every other county in our region. So if you look at the slide that says industry focus, in pre-COVID, you know, and I'm a data person. That's what I do. I like to look at the data. The data tells me things. I always like to say the data doesn't tell the story, we do. And so I would like to be able to tell your story to accurately reflect what's going on here. And so if I just look at the data pre-COVID, what it tells me is that your largest industries are government, jobs, retail trade, construction, healthcare and social assistance, and your top growing industries are obviously the oil and gas, accommodation and food services, manufacturing and construction. This may not necessarily be true after COVID, and the data is not going to have enough time to catch up to be able to reflect how we plan for not just what's going on right now with unemployment, but how we plan to recover, and so that your economy is stronger after this is all over with, and it will be over eventually. So to do that, we would like to ask you a series of questions in the form of a survey, and it's a survey that I will email out to you, and then you'll click a link and fill out the survey. But to ask you what are your economic priorities? I know what the data is telling me. I know where your unemployment claims are, but maybe they're not exactly reflective of exactly what's going on here on the ground. You know your community best. Your job seekers are the experts in their own lives, and they know what they need. And we would like to be able to ask you questions about that. What are the in-demand occupations for your county? And maybe they are the same as the data that I have. Maybe they are, but we'd love for you to tell us that and confirm that. What has been the impact of COVID? What have been some of the things that you've done to mitigate issues, whether it's housing assistance or other types of benefits that people can avail themselves of in the county that have been available to them? So what has been the impact of COVID on the economic priorities, but also your recovery efforts? And then what are your priorities related to each area of focus for workforce solutions? And I have a slide that will outline each one of those things. And then what companies exist in your county that can provide on-the-job training or work experience? It doesn't necessarily just have to be your institutions of higher education or training partners or somebody like that, but there are companies that would say, yes, I'll train 5 people to be a forklift operator, or some other occupation, and how do they participate in the workforce, and how can we connect with those so that we can make a more robust ecosystem? And then what other voices and stakeholders should I be talking to? I see you here, and you represent your constituencies, but I'm sure there are other people that have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in this county, like your churches or your Boys and Girls Club, your Camp Gladiator folks. There are lots of people who participate in what goes on in the county that could probably give us some valuable input on what types of planning we need to be doing for workforce development here. And so when I talk about the areas of focus for workforce solutions, these are the major areas of focus that Workforce Solutions does. These are our program areas. We have a significant portion of our budget is dedicated to child care, because when folks need to go to work, someone needs to take care of their children, and it's often cited as one of the biggest barriers to getting and maintaining employment. So it's a big focus on child care and early childhood development, youth programs, what types of internships, work experience, or after-school programs are going on in your county, what's going on with adults. Are there people that are upskilling? Upskilling is when you take your existing workforce and you train them for better jobs without ever letting them go. We track how earnings are increased, and obviously the target occupations. We also have a special focus on the special populations like SNAP and TANF beneficiaries, military and veterans, obviously disabled folks, foster youth, vocational rehabilitation, persons experiencing homelessness, and formerly incarcerated folks. So those are separate programs that have different areas of funding that are available to them as well. And so we'd like to know if there is anything that we should know about and if that's going on in your county relative to these populations, so that we can adequately serve those populations here. And then obviously the other part of the local plan is a lot of community data that we would report out for your county. And so the survey methodology is a mixture of quantitative and qualitative data. The survey data, the survey is a mixture of clicking boxes and letting us know, but there'll also be an area there that you could type out a long form answer if you would like that, and give us your thoughts. I really want to know exactly what you're thinking about how we can best serve this county.
I like one of
business out here. And we've been trying to figure out how to attract companies to come build in Wilson County to, provide the job opportunities that we need for the residents here. And to try to shift our tax burden from the homeowners to the commercial area there.
Sure.
I'm sure y'all are in touch with a lot of businesses, and y'all would be a great asset to have to let us know if y'all find out if there's a company considering relocating or expanding somewhere. That's what we really need in Wilson County.
Yeah, and we do a lot of work, and Mr. Elbers will probably talk a lot more about this in detail, but we do work a lot with local economic development corporations and business development folks in different rural areas to do just that. My role, and I'll let Mr. Elbers talk about, but my role would be providing a lot of that data, whether it's demographic data, income data, education data, a lot like what you see here in the unemployment thing to help support your case for why someone should bring their business here.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is, and part of that is what we're trying to identify as part of the plan, is what are those economic priorities for each of the communities, right? If we were to travel just a little northeast from here and you go to Seguin in Guadalupe County, sure, they have a huge manufacturing base, right? That's one of their major priorities. I was just in a meeting with a potential lead where they're going to build another manufacturing site just about 2-3 weeks ago. Sat down with those folks and talked about, here's what the workforce has to offer in terms of programs and those types of things. Here's where you can get labor pools from, to be able to fulfill your HR needs. And so I think what would be good is for sort of that model to follow, here, right? So what are your economic priorities that you're looking at? What does the local labor force look like? And the other thing is, in terms of sort of from a regional standpoint, we exchange labor like crazy. People from San Antonio come to work here, especially during the time when we were at the height of the oil and gas, right? People were coming from all over the place to be able to sort of work, and then we'll go back home. So it's about gathering that type of information and about sort of looking at what your overall priorities are. From an economic development perspective too, in terms of sort of looking at what are your assets, right? Does the county own land that they can offer up, either on a discounted price or on a lease option where taxes are not actually charged to that particular company? But different types of sort of strategies to look at that. I mean, because certainly some of our communities are very in tune with those types of strategies like Guadalupe and Seguin. But then others, have different types of, some focus on, for example, the prison industry as one of their main sort of sources of job creation and income generation. So it just depends on what you're looking at locally.
And I think there's also a little bit of chicken and the egg thing there too. You don't necessarily have to have an existing workforce to attract a company. If a company is interested in saying, this is where I want to be, there are opportunities to provide training and credentialing and certificates to people, whatever the industry-specific credential is, to folks who already live here, so that you're upskilling your own population to meet the demands of an employer that says, no, this, I want to be here. How can we make this happen?
We're sort of the other way around to a degree in that Guadalupe County, from a manufacturing standpoint and a distribution standpoint, is very active and growing. We supply some of the workforce to support that. The difficulty that, as I see it, that we have is transportation, and that is they have Interstate 10, Interstate 37, we've got 181 and 87 and 123, and that is a hindrance to a lot of growth. And we've had people come and talk to us, but we have yet had someone make a presentation for tax relief or something like that, to where, from my standpoint, I'll speak for me, to that you could look and say, well, they're not hiring that many people. I don't see, if you understand what I'm saying, if you're coming in and you're needing a workforce and it's right here, then that's a great situation. But if you're coming in and you're going to hire 20 people and 12 of those are going to be from somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's something that happens even in the urban areas, right? So last summer, the county judge and the mayor of San Antonio announced what they would call the $1 billion week, right? So it's expansion of the Toyota plant and the suppliers, as well as the announcement of Isham, which was a big truck manufacturer, that we're literally going to have about $1 billion worth of investment. The challenge there, right, is literally those jobs can go to people coming in from somewhere else, coming from California, coming from the Midwest or wherever, if we don't train those people to be able to be qualified for that. So that's what I think the plan is sort of intending to do, is to try to match those opportunities, right? Economic priorities and opportunities along with local workforce development. You know, because that happened in the history of Toyota. They've never been able to 100% meet their HR needs. And in large part, they're in a pool from other parts of the state, and for that matter, outside of the state, to meet their HR needs. That's crazy, because you think, you know, kids who maybe don't want to go to college can have a really great opportunity to make $60,000, $70,000 working for a Toyota manufacturer or their suppliers, right? But that requires us to focus on that and to be able to, you know, create the opportunities where we actually, if they don't have the skill set, to train them so that we can put them on that sort of pathway.
Yeah, and it's I think it's easy to be focused on, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen, there's so much uncertainty, and it's easy to be focused on, like, how can we, you know, we look at the jobs, and, you know, your hospital is has the most job openings right now. How do we put folks into those jobs? And it's easy to get focused on what's right in front of us, but this local plan is intended to take us through 2024 with a 2-year update. So we really want to be able to meet your long-term needs, and that's why, you know, we really want to understand what your priorities are for at least the next 4 years, you know, 4 to 10 years, honestly.
Well, I appreciate the questions, Judge. Thank you so much for hosting us here, and Commissioners, thank you for your time. I'll just say one couple of last things. I'm going to give you my card, and to answer, you know, your questions, and to any time that you have in the future that you need our participation or support for companies that are considering moving here, and you need data from us, or you need for me to be there, be happy to do that. Do that all the time, all across the region. And then, of course, I used to work in LaSalle County and Cotulla for Judge Patterson when he was judge at the time. So I'm very familiar with, you know, sort of the struggles and the concerns with rural communities. I want to introduce Linda Canizales, who is our new Government and Public Relations Coordinator. So if you can't get a hold of me, Judge, or Commissioners, by all means, please contact Linda. Linda, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Again, my name is Linda Canizales, and I'm the new Public and Government Relations Coordinator. You know, one of my greatest passions is storytelling, not only about individuals, but about communities. So I'm really looking forward to working with you all. Can you please let me know who I can give my card to? Okay. Oh, you got a whole stack here.
We're making up stories all the time. So.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your time.
I'll be seeing y'all tomorrow.
Oh, sounds good. Okay.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 8, Wichita Jackson County Judge Michelle Mora, Advanced Manager. 8A, update and accept the Coronavirus Energy Supplemental Fund, CESF, grant award administered by ACOG and the Office of the Governor in the amount of $168,939.89.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. So we passed a resolution for this grant back on January 22nd. And we just were notified a couple weeks ago that we were actually officially awarded, and they did award us the full amount that we requested. So this amount covers all of the coronavirus expenditures from February 1st to June 15th of this year. So I'm just asking that you accept the monies, and that way we can finish up with the state and get us that reimbursement.
I'll make a motion, we accept it, Judge.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Wiley, second by Commissioner Hyde. We accept the the funds. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So, okay.
Thank you.
You need to sign it now or later? Oh, okay.
I thought I'd get that out quick before they change their mind.
Okay, moving on to 8B, discuss and approve the resolution for the four-year 2021 Texas Indigent Defense Commission formula grant for Wilson County.
This is our usual grant for the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. This is a formula grant based on the caseload. We were given, I think, about $33,000 last year. So it's not a significant amount of money, but every little bit helps. This does not affect any part of that regional public defender program that you all approved a couple of months ago. So I'm just going through the process of having of doing a resolution in support of the formula grant as part of the application process for this fiscal year 2021. So let me read the resolution. Resolution of the Commissioners Court of the County of Wilson authorizing the filing of a grant application with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission for the 2021 Indigent Defense Formula Grant Program. Whereas under the provisions of the Texas Government Code Section 79.037 and Texas Administrative Code Chapter 173, counties are eligible to receive grants from the Texas Indigent Defense Commission to provide improvements in indigent defense services in the county. And whereas this grant program will assist the county in the implementation and the improvement of the indigent criminal defense services in this county. Whereas Wilson County Commissioners Court has agreed that in the event of loss or misuse of the funds, Wilson County Commissioners Court assures that the funds will be returned in full to the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. Now therefore be it resolved and ordered that the county judge of this county is designated as the authorized official to apply for, accept, decline, modify, or cancel the grant application for the Indigent Defense Formula Grant Program and all other necessary documents to accept said grant. And be it further resolved that the county auditor is designated as the financial officer for this grant. Adopted this 27th day of October 2020.
I've got a comment to make on that. This is the #1 unfunded mandate that we get from the state.
Amen.
We are obligated to supply indigent defense for the defendants that are here and qualify. That's between $300,000 and $400,000 a year, and the state's so gracious they give us about 30 to take care of that.
And it's
The rest of it comes out of our taxpayers' pockets.
And it's growing at a fairly rapid rate too, Judge.
Yes.
It's not like
that's
it's
the-
there and holding.
That's the reason we're doing this, and the public defender, that's gonna help us. We'll have a good idea of exactly what it's gonna cost us, instead of just everybody lining up in the door. They can line up and they have their defender there when they get to court. We don't have to worry about having a bunch of attorneys showing up. But this will take care of a little bit, every little bit helps, like Michelle said.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Hyatt and second by Commissioner Wiley. We approve the resolution. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so much for all that. Now we're going to agenda item number 9. Ernest Skip Hyatt, Commissioner, Precinct 3, discuss and take action on AT&T FirstNet communication devices for county employees.
Did some research on it, spoke with John. There's a Senate Bill 944 that requires any private or any electronic communication the county or government employees use to document and save the emails, the text, or whatever, database, and I don't think we've been in compliance with that. Another thing is, of course, our tax base, the COVID pandemic affected our budgets and things. I was trying to find a way to help the county save a little more money. So when I did the research on this phone that they offer, found out that it's in the event of a disaster or some other event, their service is prioritized for emergency management, fire, police, EMS, other essential county employees or government employees. Their phone will work if they have portable units that will help keep the phone system in place. So I asked our auditor how many people we had on the monthly stipend, and I said it was about 95, at a cost of about $75,000 a year. Under this plan, the deputies that are getting the laptops in their cars under this new program are getting the hotspot. These phones here, for those subscribers, you have unlimited talk, text, data, and tethering, which you give the hotspot for the mobile unit for $44.99 a month. Other employees that don't need that, the cost is $39.99 a month. So what I just did a generic roundup of what all everyone's getting versus what this would cost. We're looking at a savings of about $30,000 a year. These phones would be owned by the county, assigned to the employee. They're upgraded every year, where you get your new phone every year. And they have the cloud that would store all of the data required to store by Senate Bill 944. So it's pretty significant savings for phones for the county.
Commissioner, that data, I don't know if you caught it, but that data archival is an additional expense.
Yeah,
It's about
it's additional $5 a month. And I added that in over the numbers, so. And it's something that would keep us in compliance with where John said he doesn't know who's saving the data now. We're supposed to, if we don't have a designated custodian to save all these records, that would all be in one place and be done automatically and keep us in compliance with the requirements for the
Would
state.
it download automatically or back up
It
automatically?
backups automatically.
It's automatic? On, where would the server be or what?
Well,
Is it on AT&T's?
no, the company called Smarsh.com is the one that does that. They're the ones who AT&T or FirstNet contracted with to do.
Okay, so, will we have to get a new telephone number for each person, or can we be able to use the same number, or?
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask him about that. He could come in and do a presentation for us.
I'd like to see the presentation,
Okay.
if he would, or could he, do it in the commissioner's quarters?
He's out of town today, but all I need is get in touch with him. He can come in and give us a presentation on it. I know it's a little inconvenient if you want to carry your personal cell or your work with the county cell, but we had that in Bear County when I was there. And that, that was strictly for county use, so, and it's very inexpensive. If you look at, we have a few people being paid $2,400 a year, some $1,200 a year, some $600 a year, so, you get this down to $50 or $600 a year, for the ones who need the tethering, $500 a year for those who don't. So the savings is about $30,000 a year. So.
John looked like he had.
Oh, yeah, I just, I've been putting together a little list of things about this. I do think you would probably need a different number unless the employee was willing to give up their personal cell phone number for this. Currently, my understanding, unless I misread that, and Kathy, you tell me if I'm wrong, the employee is the custodian of the record on the phone until they provide it to the county.
Yeah.
And even after termination, the employee or the ex-employee remains the custodian of that record until they provide it to us. They would have to carry two phones if they want, a personal and a county phone with them. They would need to have both phones. And just thinking about it is something else you charge. One other thing to charge and remember, but the phone will eventually need to be replaced. And there is cost associated with disposal and replacement. We would need to probably provide some kind of a backup service. We don't currently have that in place, but we would probably need to do that for this. And we would have to research that some. The employee lose their cell phone stipend, which would be a savings to the county probably. Additional record keeping for the county as far as keeping track of the phones, and I don't know if that would be the IT department or human resources who's going to need to keep track of them. Also maintenance and repair issues. If the phone breaks, does the employee deal with AT&T FirstNet directly, or does the county deal with the broken phones? And then we also would, as far as the broken phones, who pays for it? If there's no accidental damage warranty, is the county responsible for replacing the broken phones? That I don't know. And I assume there would be some kind of accidental damage plan on this to protect for that. And then, if damage occurs outside the warranty period. And I do know sometimes employees probably, I would assume probably, who do not receive a cell phone stipend may use their personal phone sometimes for county-related communications. And so I don't know, how we would capture those. But I do, it does give us more control of the records that may be on the phone. And upon termination, the county retains ownership of the phone. And the recurring cell phone subscription fees do appear to be less expensive option versus the cell phone stipend. How much was that backup service? I didn't figure that into my calculation.
$5.
But I think even with the backup service, it's probably less expensive than the stipend based on those numbers. And in the event of a network outage, those that are using FirstNet, FirstNet is intended to be a higher priority than the regular AT&T network. So if, in the event of a natural disaster, like you remember the tornado we had a few years back that took out service for a while, their intent is to get up FirstNet prior to the other networks as a higher priority.
And this is not just law enforcement, this is...
No, it could be for the JPs, for law enforcement, for commissioners, for...
Anyone that has a stipend?
Yes. Anyone who could be a first responder or a backup to first responder in some way, shape, or form. County Attorney's Office, the way he described it, Atascosa and Walden County and Bear County have it, and a lot of their departments are on the phone plan that aren't needing first responders or really traditional backup to first responders. So. But the phones are upgraded annually. That's something in the brochure, the literature I handed y'all. I would think that you would get a new phone number. I don't, if you're going to have a county designated phone, I don't think you would want your personal phone number associated with that phone to prevent personal business on a county phone. So I would guess that the county would get a specific phone number for that phone that county business with, and you can keep your personal phone number for your personal business.
Commissioner, I'd like to take some my quick calculation, I'm off about $15,000 to $17,000 from where you're coming from, so I want to make sure we're looking at the same thing.
Okay. I just rounded up the numbers you gave me, and divided and added this. I don't know how many people get the $1,200 a year. Some get 600 a year, a couple of get 2,400
Ralph,
a
but
year.
if you take that total, the 75,000,
Yeah.
and if you take the 45 times the 95 employees and multiply that
Yeah, but
by,
not everybody's at 45. A lot of them would be on the 39 or 40, so.
oh, not everybody would have the
Oh, no,
full
'cause
data.
the only ones that would need the tethering are the deputies in a patrol car that need the hotspot for their computer, that's all.
Oh, okay.
That's what I understand.
We don't have anybody who's $2,400 a year, I'm aware of it.
Yeah, we do.
Who?
We have,
It's not me, and it's not you.
we do.
We have
You
one.
do?
We have
Yeah.
one. In our IT department.
What's that?
In our IT department.
Oh, okay. Well, I can see that.
And we have
We
one,
have-
we have one
It'd be
constable,
one or
with
two
two phone
to
stops.
get that. Not a whole department, not even, because that's our IT department. Two people.
And that would make sense to
So
consider.
one people, so we have one person that gets that, okay. And I can
Well,
see
well,
John.
we have another one too, Judge. We have a constable who's also a policeman, and he gets 2 stipends. One for his constable, one for his deputy. and
That's still 2 different, he's considered 2 different employees.
Right, but I mean, one county phone would serve the purpose for both.
Hopefully, because we thought one stipend would serve for one.
Then it should. I mean, he can only answer
Yeah.
one phone at a time.
I can understand that.
Yeah, 2,400 a year for a phone allowance seems excessive for somebody just because we have 2 different positions.
Oh, that's, but we weren't paying it, but then we started paying it because we had to.
Well, I don't think we have to. I think it was
Yeah,
our choice.
it came to the court, and we had to do that. I remember that.
We'll have to research that.
Huh?
We'd have to research that again, Judge. I don't.
I'd research it now. Okay, do you want to wait until after we have a presentation?
Yeah, I would like to, I'll go ahead and make the motion. We table this until we can get a presentation from Mr. Funk to the court to answer all the questions we may have about this.
Motion to table it. Second by Commissioner Gomez. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so this is tabled until next Commissioner's Court.
Yes.
Or whenever we can get them here.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 10. Ernest Skip Hyatt, Commissioner Precinct 3, J.L.C. Botter for Human Resources. Discuss and take action on a new policy regarding county CDL drivers and U.S. Department of Transportation.
And that Ms. Bofford has intimate knowledge of this discussion. I'll give the floor to her.
Okay, so the U.S. Department of Transportation came out with new regulations this year. And basically what they're aiming at doing is they have a database that is online for all CDL drivers, and employers are going to be responsible for making sure that all of our CDL drivers are enrolled into this database. The requirement is that we randomly drug test 50% of our CDL drivers one time a year, and we randomly alcohol test 10% of our CDL drivers one time a year.
Was that 50 and 10?
50 and 10. And this has to be recorded into this database. The database will cost us $1.25 per employee to enroll. And we do have to run a query on our CDL drivers one time a year as well. What this database does is it's for other employers or ourselves. If we're looking at hiring a CDL driver, we can go into this database, query the individual, and see if they have any type of violations that we don't want here in the county. But the first round of this does have to be done by the end of the year. So, in the handouts that I gave y'all, the very first page outlines the, regulations that they have put forward.
The end of this year?
Yes, sir.
Jeez.
Another mandate.
Another one. And then the back page is a consent form that each one of our CDL drivers will have to sign in order for us to enlist them into the query and do the drug testing as necessary.
What is the cost of this?
It is $1.25 per employee, but that does not include the cost of the drug and alcohol testing
$1.25 per what?
per CDL driver,
I mean, just one time
just to put
cost?
into the database for this year.
Okay, do we have to do them again for next year?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we don't have that many CDLs, obviously.
Just our group.
It'll be mostly what's on road and bridge.
That's right.
So if you have someone that refuses to sign it, do we terminate them?
They have to abide by the
State law, you know.
This was mandate, DOT mandate.
I got a crusty employee or two, not that they drink or whatever, but might refuse because of being a government outreach or something. Okay? Well, I think it's a good idea.
Motion by Commissioner Ball,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Wiley, that we approve this. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been passed.
I do have a question on the way out is, so are we going to, you know, part of it, 50% was random drug test, 10% alcohol. Are we going to follow that for this year? Just, and how are we going to, you can put names in a hat or what?
It'll be random. Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's all we have to do. It's not like
That's it.
everybody necessarily. And then we'll need to turn around and do it again next year.
Next year.
And is that something we do in like the fourth quarter next year?
We can, just because we're doing it in the fourth quarter this year.
Okay.
It just has to be done by the end of the year.
I just wanted to understand so I can explain it.
Yes, sir. And then I'll work with y'all on getting these consent forms signed and back into my office so that we have them.
Leland, is this different from the driving record background checks?
So
for everybody in the county?
the driving record